So what we're going to look at today is about making a little greenhouse for your plants. We don't always have lots of space and we want our plants to grow as quickly and as well as they can. In our greenhouses, we're going to have a few different processes taking place. Now we make the greenhouse to try and use what we know about how plants grow and what they need to make them grow their very best as quickly as they can so that we can produce as many plants as possible. So looking at photosynthesis, which is our first process here, the plant takes in carbon dioxide through the leaves and water through the roots, and it uses them to make glucose and oxygen. So these are the first two things that are sort of being produced within our plant. So we've made glucose and oxygen, and you'll notice that these two can be used in the next process. Now glucose is like a sugar. We need that sugar, the plant needs that sugar for growth and making cell walls, and to store, to break down and use later. So these two are really important, and the plant stores some of the glucose, releases some of the oxygen, but will use some in respiration. So respiration is the second process here. We respire, plants and animals both respire, and we use this glucose and this oxygen, and when we break it down we make carbon dioxide and water. Now this process is really helpful because it releases loads of energy, and plants need energy to move. Anything that is living will need to move to respond to its surroundings. The plant needs to move towards the sunlight. It can only do that with energy. So it must take part in respiration. Now the carbon dioxide and water that's released, you'll notice we need it for photosynthesis. So that will come up and we will take part in photosynthesis again. So there are both processes just cycling round, which is really, really helpful. So we've got photosynthesis happening, and then respiration, and photosynthesis and respiration, and that continues to keep our plant healthy, make sure it's always got the carbon dioxide and it's always got the glucose and the oxygen that it needs. Then we move on to our second process, and in our second process we have transpiration. Transpiration is the water being evaporated from the leaves. So our water is absorbed through the roots from the soil, that's why we have moisture in the soil. It then travels up the stem through something called the xylem, and is evaporated through the leaves as water vapour. So now we move on to our last process, which is condensation. So the water vapour that's been released rises, hits the top of the greenhouse or the Ziploc bag, and then it condenses, which means it turns back into a liquid, falls down and sits in the soil as moisture, ready to be absorbed again. So you'll notice we have another cycle here, where the plant is always making sure that there is water available. No water can escape because we've got our sealed greenhouse. So have a little look. If you're not sure, feel free to pause the video here, and then you can look at BBC Bite Size to follow up on some of the science, or you can do that whilst you're waiting for your plants to grow. But let's look at making our greenhouse to use this knowledge. So we're going to look at making greenhouses very much like this one I've started here. I know it looks a little bit like a boat, but there's logic there. So my greenhouse here has some plants. I'm hoping they're going to grow. I'm going to put it in my window and try and encourage as much sunlight because I haven't got direct sunlight all the time. And I've given it its own little greenhouse here. And there's still a lid on here so it can open. Now this idea came from my terrarium. So here we go. I got this as a present last year, and what it is I've got my plants in here. It's a sealed glass unit, it gets the sunlight, it has moisture, and the plants take care of themselves. Now that's really easy, that I can remember, which is fabulous. So I've got the sealed unit. So using the knowledge that we've just looked at, my plant is photosynthesizing, okay, it's taking the sunlight, it's photosynthesizing, it's releasing oxygen. It then uses the oxygen to respire. The water in here is being used, it's evaporating, condensing, and that's repeating it again and again and again, which is really helpful. So that gave me the idea to make my greenhouse here. I'll add in a picture for you so you can see what it would look like. So there are different levels of this. That's the first thing I need to say is this one can be quite tricky because I did have to use a craft knife and a glue gun. So if you're a little bit younger, this one might not be the go-to, You can do this with a pot and put cling film around. You can do it with many different things. But the easiest way, if you want to just set up a few and record and observe how your plants grow, I would advise just using either Ziploc bags or slippery fishes. So you can see I've still got some air in here, so there's lots of carbon dioxide for my plants. Just a few little seedlings in there, and what you'll be able to see is you'll be able to see them grow. Make sure the soil is moist though, and you'll also be able to see their roots and the amazing root system they develop. So that's a really cool thing to do. So I'm going to let that one run and see what we can get from that. If you don't have one of those, like I said, a food Ziploc bag, perfect. Or I have a lot of these being a teacher, so I might fill one of these up. The advantage of these is I can open them and close them to get a bit more oxygen and a bit more carbon dioxide in for that gas exchange when I need to. And I can open it, take the plants out, and then replant some more. And what I might do with this is actually just stick it in the window. You might have done that already at school. It's really helpful, and you can see the plant growth amazingly well. So those are your choices. I'm going to go ahead and first of all do the more complicated one because it will take a little bit longer, and then these ones are already set, so I will track that and let you know how it goes. Okay, let's start. So the first thing you'll want to do is you'll want to open your bottle. Okay, now I don't just saw it in half because I want this at the end. I want to be able to open my bottle. If there's too much condensation, I want to be able to release some, and I want to be able to close it. So I need to keep that intact. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line down halfway and cut, if you like, an opening. Okay, so just that top section. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so this is the sort of thing that we're looking for. So what I've done is I've gone down the side and along, up and along. There's no specific sizing I've done for that. I've just done it so it looks, you can see there, that looks good, where it looks sort of equal, because this is going to become the top of my greenhouse, and it's all going to change shape at some point anyway, so don't worry too much about getting exact same sizes. You just want a section that you can lift up and off. Okay, so now you need to just cut that flap out again. Use scissors. If you have a craft blade, feel free to use it, or get someone to open it for you and you can go around it with scissors, that's fine. When you're done, you should have this top section. You should, if I've done it correctly, be able to just pull it up and off. So that's going to make the top of your greenhouse there. It creates a little bit of support and makes sure the condensation is occurring as we want it to really well there. So now we've got that, we're going to pop that to a side for a second. Again, don't worry about how neat it is. Not worried about how neat it is because you're going to have loads going on in there anyway. So now you need your skewer sticks, and you'll want to use them in pairs because it's quite large. We do want the best support we can. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick our skewer sticks in each corner of this opening. So now I've done all four, you should have something looking like this. So don't worry too much about what way they go, if they're in line or not in line. Again, not too worried, it all comes together at the end. So here we go. So this is now going to be the structure. So what I'm going to do is to make sure my roof first of all attaches. Now again, you can glue gun it, but I'm sure you would have noticed by now that if you have a hot glue gun, plastic can tend to melt. So I don't want to do that too much and risk, because this is much more flimsy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a hole in each corner and I'm going to feed it on. That way I can have a shorter greenhouse, and as my plants grow I can pull it up if I want. Beautiful. So now I've got all four and the roof put on. If you feel a bit of tension from the roof and from the base and it feels a little bit different, like it should go back together but isn't quite, just bear in mind if you heat it again, the plastic, it's losing a lot of the strength and the tension. So for example, mine wasn't quite lining up, so what I've just had to do is I've just had to cut off the end, move it along a bit and re-stick it on. That just gave it a little bit more structure here. So don't be afraid to take it apart and fiddle with it. It's all part of the engineering skills, your problem solving going on there. So feel free to do that. So now I've got my basic greenhouse structure, but you'll notice it falls over. It's got a round bottom here, so I need to create some sort of support. The best way I find to do that is just a bit of card, and if you roll the card up into thin tubes and attach it to the bottom, it will stop it rolling, just like I did here. So this one has them either side and that holds it flat on my windowsill. So I'm going to attach those now. And I'm going to fill it up most of the way with soil, but leave a little space because I want to add some seeds. So now it's filled with soil. I'm being careful not to cover this with soil because obviously I want to open it up to release some condensation, to allow a bit of extra gas exchange if it looks like my plants are growing as they should. So make sure that you leave that space there clear. So now I have my soil, I'm going to sprinkle some of my seeds. So I've just got some seeds that were donated from Friends of the Earth. They're just wildflower. I just want to see what grows. And I'm just going to sprinkle them. Okay, awesome. So now I've got those, I'm going to add a very thin layer of topsoil there. I'm going to water it and then we'll finish up our greenhouse. Now we've got our plants in, we've got it watered, we're ready for the last step. So I'm just going to use cling film. Again, if you don't have cling film, do feel free. You can use a slippery fish. I would probably cut that open and tape it over, or tape one on each side, fold it over, completely up to you. But as I've got cling film, it's the easiest thing for me to use, for me to take apart, and for me to be able to see my plant growth. That's what I'm going to use. You don't need too many layers, as long as it is sort of airtight then it will be fine. Obviously the less you use the more you can make essentially. So only thing I need to do now is fill in these gaps. So at the moment I've got gaps here. Feel free to use your cling film just to cover straight over, but I should be able to fold mine in. And there you have it, your own awesome little greenhouse. You can pop that in the window ledge, you'll be able to see your plants grow, you'll be able to measure them, track them, because you can see through it so clearly, and then you can take the cling film out, move the plants outside, and then go again. I hope you've enjoyed, have a go and see what you can do.